The message came through on every frequency Earth possessed. It was desperate, broken, and begging. Commander Day 1 stood in the communications center of the Earth Defense Coalition headquarters, watching the holographic projection flicker to life. A tall alien with silver skin and 4 eyes appeared before him. The creature's body was covered in wounds, and its voice shook with fear. "Please, humans of Earth, we are the Valthene Empire. We are dying. The Kravaxi swarm has destroyed 3 of our worlds. Over 3 billion of our people are dead. Our fleets are broken. Our colonies burn. We need your help." Day 1 felt his jaw tighten. He remembered the Valthene. 20 years ago, they had been the ones to refuse Earth's offer of friendship. They had called humans primitive. They had said humanity was too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous to join the civilized species of the galaxy. Now they came crawling back, begging for the violence they once condemned. Diplomat Hyjin entered the room, her face calm but her eyes sharp. She had been in those first contact meetings 2 decades ago. She had heard the Valthene insults directly. She stood beside Day 1 and watched the message replay. "They rejected us," Day 1 said quietly. "They said we were warmongers, animals playing with starships." "Yes," Hyjin replied. "They did." The Valthene ambassador continued his plea on the recording. "We know we wronged you. We know we refused your hand in friendship. But we beg you now, if you have any mercy, any compassion, please help us. The swarm does not negotiate. It does not stop. It only consumes. If we fall, it will spread to other systems. Other species will die. Please." The message ended. Day 1 and Hyjin stood in silence for a long moment. Around them, other officers and officials gathered. Everyone knew this decision would change everything. "What do we do?" asked a young lieutenant. Hyjin turned to face the room. "We call a council meeting. Every major nation on Earth needs to vote on this." The meeting happened within 6 hours. Leaders from every continent appeared on screens in the coalition chamber. The debate was fierce. Many wanted to refuse. Why should Earth save a species that had insulted them? Why should human soldiers die for aliens who had treated them like savages? Captain Jae-sung stood up during the debate. He was old now, his hair white, but his eyes still burned with intensity. He had fought in the colony wars, the brutal conflict between Earth's nations over the first habitable planets humanity discovered. He knew war better than anyone in the room. "I understand the anger," Jae-sung said. "I feel it too. The Valthene treated us like dirt. But let me ask you something. If we let them die, if we stand by and watch an entire species get exterminated, what does that make us? Are we really better than the swarm?" The room fell silent. "We always said we wanted to be better," Jae-sung continued. "We said we wanted to prove we weren't just violent apes with guns. Well, here's our chance. We can show mercy. We can be the bigger species." A Russian general spoke up. "And if we do help them, what then?" "We send our people to die for aliens who hate us." Jae-sung nodded. "Maybe, but we do it on our terms. If we go with full tactical authority. We fight the war our way, not theirs. They want our help. They follow our commands." Hyjin watched the faces on the screens. Slowly, one by one, leaders began to nod. The vote was called. It wasn't unanimous, but it was clear. Earth would answer the call for aid. Day 1 sent the response himself. He recorded a simple message and transmitted it to Valthene space. "We will help you. Our fleet will arrive in your territory within 2 weeks. But understand this. If we fight your war, we fight it our way. You will give us complete tactical authority over all military operations. Your forces will follow our commands without question. If you cannot accept these terms, we will not come. The response from the Valthene came in less than an hour. The same silver-skinned ambassador appeared, tears streaming down his face. Yes, anything. We agree to your terms. Please hurry. The swarm advances every day. Day 1 closed the transmission and turned to his staff. Get me Fleet Admiral Ba'ora. Tell her to prepare the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet for immediate deployment. Across Earth, the war machine began to wake up. Shipyards that had been building cargo vessels switched to warship production. Soldiers who had been training in simulators prepared for real combat. Scientists who had been researching peaceful technologies turned their minds to weapons. In a small apartment in Seoul, Engineer Tae Yang received his deployment orders. He kissed his wife goodbye and promised to return. He didn't tell her about the project he'd been working on. She didn't need to know about the antimatter warheads, yet in a laboratory in Stockholm, biologist Sun Hee sealed the last container of her experimental compound. She had designed it to disrupt insect communication systems for pest control. Now it would be tested on an alien hive mind. The irony wasn't lost on her. Fleet Admiral Ba'ora stood on the bridge of the Edis Indomitable, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. Around her, hundreds of other vessels prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel. She looked at the tactical display showing the Valthene Empire. Somewhere out there, an enemy was consuming entire worlds. All ships report ready, Admiral, her first officer said. Ba'ora took a deep breath. Then let's go save some aliens. And let's show the galaxy what humanity does best. The fleet jumped. The journey to war had begun. The Valthene had asked for aid. They were about to learn what that meant when you asked humans for help. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Valthene space. Fleet Admiral Ba'ora watched the tactical display light up with information. Dozens of Valthene ships floated in defensive positions around their core worlds. They looked battered, with hull damage and missing sections visible even from this distance. A communication channel opened. A Valthene officer appeared on screen. His name was High Commander Thelvan, and he wore the elaborate uniform of their military elite. His 4 eyes studied Ba'ora with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Admiral Ba'ora, we are grateful for your arrival. Our forces stand ready to coordinate with yours. We have prepared detailed battle plans following our traditional engagement protocols. Ba'ora shook her head. No, we're not using your protocols. You agreed to give us tactical authority. That means we do this our way. Thelvan's skin changed color slightly, a sign of discomfort. But surely you will want to understand how civilized warfare is conducted in this region of space. There are rules, standards of engagement that all species follow. That's why you're losing, Ba'ora said flatly. Send us all your intelligence on the swarm. Locations, movement patterns, known behaviors. We'll handle the rest. Over the next 2 days, the human fleet studied everything the Valthene had learned about the Kravaxi swarm. Engineer Tae Yang worked with a team in the weapons bay, assembling devices the Valthene had never seen before. When Thelvan toured the human flagship, he stopped in front of a containment unit. What is this? He asked, looking at the pulsing energy core. Taeyang looked up from his work. Antimatter warhead. We call it a planet cracker, but that's just a nickname. It won't actually crack a planet. Just devastate everything on the surface. Thelvan stepped back in horror. Antimatter weapons are banned by the Galactic Council. They are considered crimes against civilization. Good thing we're not part of your council then, Tae Yang replied. Returning to his CALIBRATION stot in another section of the ship, biologist Sun Hee prepared her chemical compounds. A Valthene scientist named Palara watched her work with growing alarm. You're creating a biological weapon? Palara asked. Sun Hee nodded. The swarm uses pheromones to coordinate. This compound disrupts their communication. They'll lose cohesion, start acting randomly. But that's chemical warfare. It's barbaric. Sun He met her eyes. Your people are dying. Do you want to survive, or do you want to maintain your moral high ground? Palar had no answer. The first major battle came at Val 7, a mining colony on the edge of Valthene territory. The Kravaxi swarm had sent a massive force to consume it. The Valthene fleet moved to intercept, forming a traditional battle line. Their ships spread out in a wide formation, preparing for long-range bombardment. Bo Ura watched from her command chair and shook her head. They're going to get slaughtered fighting like that. All ships, prepare for the hammer formation. Thelvin, who was observing from a liaison position on the bridge, looked confused. What is the hammer formation? You'll see, Badora said. The human fleet didn't form a line. Instead, they scattered in what looked like complete chaos. Valthene officers monitoring the battle from their own ships sent panicked messages asking what the humans were doing. Then the Kravaxi swarm ships arrived. The swarm vessels were organic, grown rather than built. They looked like massive insects covered in armor plating. They moved with precision, acting as one mind controlling hundreds of bodies. They immediately targeted the Valthene battle line. That's when the humans struck. 3 human destroyers that had been playing dead suddenly activated their engines and rammed directly into the swarm formation at incredible speed. The impacts destroyed the destroyers, but they also tore through dozens of swarm ships. Before the swarm could react, human fighters launched from hidden positions in the debris field, deploying nuclear mines. Thelvin watched in shock as explosions ripped through the enemy fleet. You sacrificed your own ships, your own crews. The crews evacuated before impact, Ma'ara explained. Those were remote-controlled drones made to look like destroyers. We sacrificed scrap metal and electronics. The swarm sacrificed real soldiers. Pilot Kyung-soo led his squadron through the chaos, targeting swarm communication nodes. Every Kravaxi ship they destroyed made the rest slightly less coordinated. Behind them, larger human vessels launched boarding pods. Boarding pods? Thelvin asked. You're boarding enemy vessels during a fleet battle? Why waste a perfectly good ship? Baara replied. If we can capture it, we will. If not, our teams will sabotage it from the inside. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Valthene forces fought bravely, but it was the human tactics that won the day. False retreats drew swarm ships into ambushes. Kamikaze drones disguised as damaged fighters flew into swarm engines. Human soldiers in captured swarm vessels turned the ship's weapons on their former allies. When it was over, the Kravaxi swarm had lost an entire battle group. 300 ships destroyed or captured. The Valthene had lost 15 vessels. The humans had lost 2 actual ships and 17 drones. Thelvin stood in the aftermath, watching debris float through space. This is how you fight? With deception and suicide attacks and boarding actions. Captain Jae-sung, who had joined the fleet as an advisor, stood beside him. This is how you win. Your people have been fighting honorably and losing badly. We're fighting dirty and winning. Which method saves more Valthene lives? Thelvin couldn't argue with that logic, but something in his eyes showed he was deeply troubled. Over the next week, the human fleet pushed the swarm back from 3 more systems. Each battle showed the Valthene more of humanity's brutal efficiency. They saw humans use chemical weapons, biological agents, radiation bombs, and psychological warfare. They watched as intelligence officer Young-ho hacked into swarm communications and sent false orders, turning entire groups of enemy ships against each other. After one particularly brutal battle, Thelvin confronted Baora directly. You fight without honor. You use weapons that civilized species have banned. You treat war like a manufacturing process, cold and efficient. How can you live with yourselves? Baora looked at him for a long moment. You asked us to save you. You didn't ask us to fight your way. We're winning your war because we're willing to do what you're not. If that bothers you, maybe you should have died with your honor intact instead of begging us for help. The words were harsh, but they were true. The Valthene had asked for aid, and humanity had answered. But they hadn't expected this kind of answer. The war entered its third month, and humanity showed no signs of slowing down. Intelligence Officer Young-ho sat in a darkened room surrounded by computer screens. He had been working for 72 hours straight, breaking deeper into the Kravaxi swarm's communication network. His eyes were red and his hands shook from too much coffee. But he smiled when he finally cracked the encryption. Got you, he whispered within hours. Young-ho began feeding false information into the swarm network. He sent orders telling one group of ships to attack another. He created phantom threats that made entire fleets retreat from important positions. He even managed to convince a breeding ship to self-destruct by making it think it was contaminated. High Commander Thelvin watched from the observation deck as Kravaxi ships tore into each other, confused and panicking. This is wrong. You're not fighting them. You're manipulating them, turning them against themselves. Young-ho glanced up from his screens. Yes, and it's working. We've destroyed more swarm ships this week through confusion than through direct combat. Isn't that better? Fewer human and Valthene casualties. But it's not honorable, Thelvin insisted. Honor doesn't win wars, Young-ho replied. Strategy does. On another front, Pilot Kyung-soo led what the humans called extinction runs. These were suicide missions into the heart of swarm territory, targeting their breeding world ships. These massive vessels grew new Kravaxi soldiers by the thousands every day. Destroying them would cripple the swarm's ability to replace losses. Kyung-soo's fighter carried a new type of weapon that biologist Sun-hee had developed. It was a viral agent designed to attack the swarm's hive mind connection. When released inside a breeding ship, it would cause the hive consciousness to fragment and collapse. The mission was dangerous. Breeding world ships were heavily defended. Kyung-soo lost half his squadron just getting through the outer defenses. But he made it to the target, released the payload, and watched through his rear cameras as the massive ship began to shake and break apart. Thousands of Kravaxi died in minutes, their minds literally torn apart by the virus. When Kyung-soo returned to the fleet, medic Ji-woo was waiting. She treated his injuries from the battle, then asked him how he felt about killing so many. I try not to think about it, Kyung-soo admitted. If I think about it, I won't be able to do it again. And we need to do it again. Ji-woo understood. She herself struggled with the contradiction of her role. As a medic, she had treated wounded Kravaxi prisoners with the same care she gave to human soldiers. She believed every living thing deserved dignity. But she also helped Sun-hee develop better weapons to kill them more efficiently. The moral weight was crushing. A Valthene philosopher named Krenva had been embedded with the human fleet to observe and document their methods. After 3 months, she requested a meeting with Captain Jae-sung. They sat in a quiet observation room, looking out at the stars. I think I finally understand you, Krenva said. You don't hate the swarm. You're not angry at them. You don't see them as evil. No, Jae-sung agreed. We don't. Then how can you kill them so efficiently? How can you create such terrible weapons without emotion? Ji-sung thought for a moment. Because emotion makes you sloppy. If we hated them, we'd make mistakes. We'd take unnecessary risks to make them suffer. But we don't want them to suffer. We just want them to stop existing. So we approach it like any other problem. We find the most efficient solution. Krenva felt a chill run through her body. That's what terrifies us about you. You wage war the way we build houses or grow food. It's just another task to complete. Yes, Jae-sung said simply. That's exactly what it is. The turning point came when Chief Strategist Min Seo unveiled her final plan. She called it Scorched Heaven Protocol. The entire command staff gathered for the presentation, including Valthene observers. Min Seo pulled up a star map showing swarm territory. We've been fighting defensively, pushing them back from Valthene worlds. But that's not enough. The swarm will keep coming as long as they exist. So we need to eliminate them completely. How? Beora asked. Min Seo highlighted several systems. These are swarm breeding grounds and core territories. We sterilize them. Every world they control gets scorched. We collapse the space lanes leading to their territory, so no one can ever go there again. We don't just defeat the swarm, we erase it from existence. The room fell silent. Even the human officers looked uncomfortable. Thelvin stood up, his body shaking. That's genocide. You're talking about exterminating an entire species. Yes, Min Seo said calmly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. But that's monstrous. That makes you worse than the swarm. Min Seo met his eyes. The swarm has killed billions. They've destroyed entire civilizations. They don't negotiate. They don't compromise. They don't change. They only consume. If we leave them alive, they'll rebuild and return. Maybe not in your lifetime, but eventually, they'll kill again. So we end them now. Beora stood up. This decision isn't ours alone. We need approval from the Valthene government. This is your war, we're fighting. A video call was arranged with the Valthene High Council. Min Seo presented her plan. The council members looked physically ill as she explained the details. The scope of destruction would be unprecedented. Dozens of worlds rendered lifeless. An entire region of space sealed off forever. Trillions of Kravaxi killed. The Valthene Council debated for 6 hours. The humans waited patiently. Finally, the council leader appeared on screen. He looked old and tired. We have voted, he said quietly. We approve your Scorched Heaven Protocol. We don't want this. It sickens us. But we want to survive. We want our children to live without fear. So we will allow this. May the universe forgive us. Beora nodded. We'll begin immediately. Thelvin left the conference room and found a quiet corner of the ship. Krenva found him there, his head in his hands. We've made a deal with devils, Thelvin said. We asked them to save us, and they're doing it. But the price is our souls. Krenva sat beside him. Perhaps. But our people will live. Isn't that what matters? I don't know anymore, Thelvin admitted. I don't know anything anymore. The humans began preparing for the final phase of the war. In weapons bays across the fleet, soldiers loaded planet-killing devices. Scientists calibrated stellar compressors that could make stars collapse. Engineers tested nanite swarms that could devour all organic matter on a world. Medic Jiwoo organized a quiet ceremony in one of the ship's chapels. A few dozen humans attended. They prayed for forgiveness for what they were about to do. Some cried. Some sat in silence. All of them knew they would carry this weight for the rest of their lives. But they would do it anyway. Because the job needed to be done, and they were the only ones willing to do it. Scorched Heaven began at dawn, though dawn meant nothing in space. The human fleet divided into 3 task forces, each targeting a different region of swarm space. Fleet Admiral Beora commanded the primary assault on the Kravaxi home systems. She stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the countdown to the first strike. All ships report ready, her tactical officer announced. Beora took a breath. Execute. The first weapon deployed was a stellar compressor. It was a device humanity had created but never used, a piece of technology so dangerous that its very existence was classified. Engineer Taeyang had supervised its installation on a remote drone ship. Now the drone approached a red giant star at the center of a swarm breeding system. The compressor activated. Space itself seemed to bend inward. The star began to collapse, its fusion processes accelerating beyond control. Within minutes, it went supernova. The explosion consumed every planet in the system. 4 breeding worlds, each holding billions of Kravaxi, ceased to exist in an instant. Dalvin watched from his liaison station, his face pale. "You just killed an entire star system." "Yes," Boa replied. 11 more to go. Across swarm territory, human forces unleashed weapons that violated every galactic convention. Quantum torpedoes unraveled the bonds between atoms, turning solid matter into expanding clouds of particles. Nanite swarms were released on planet surfaces, programmed to consume only organic Kravaxi tissue. The machines worked with terrifying efficiency, reducing entire populations to nothing in hours. On the ground, Commander Sang-woo led the 7th Infantry Division in an assault on the swarm's primary hive world. This was the birthplace of the Kravaxi species, a planet covered entirely in organic structures that served as nurseries, command centers, and food production facilities. Taking this world would require boots on the ground. The landing was brutal. Swarm defenders attacked in waves, using suicide tactics and overwhelming numbers. Human soldiers fought in close quarters, using flamethrowers, acid sprayers, and plasma cutters. The battles were savage and personal. Private Dong Hyan found himself face to face with a Kravaxi warrior. The creature was massive, with blade-like arms and armored carapace. It screeched and lunged. Dong Hyan emptied his rifle into it, then drew his combat knife when the gun clicked empty. The fight lasted 30 seconds and left both of them bleeding. Dong Hyan survived. The Kravaxi did not. Medic Ji Woo worked in a field hospital set up in a captured hive structure. She treated burned soldiers, amputated damaged limbs, and held dying men as they took their last breaths. Between patients, she stepped outside and vomited. The smell of burning Kravaxi flesh was everywhere, and it made her sick. "How do you keep going?" a young nurse asked her. Ji Woo wiped her mouth. "Because if I stop, they die. So I don't stop." The advance continued deeper into the hive world. Sang-woo's forces fought through layer after layer of organic architecture. They discovered nurseries filled with Kravaxi larvae. Standard protocol would be to destroy them. They were future soldiers of the swarm, but they were also children. Sang-woo made the call. "Burn it." The flamethrower teams did their job. The screaming lasted for minutes. Scout Yoon Kyung led a special operations team on a mission to locate the swarm queen. Intelligence suggested she was buried deep in the planet's core, protected by miles of living tissue and thousands of warrior drones. Finding her would be nearly impossible. Killing her would be harder. Yoon Kyung didn't plan to kill her conventionally. She carried a fusion charge, a bomb powerful enough to crack the planet's mantle if placed correctly. Her team fought for 3 days straight, pushing deeper into the hive. They lost members one by one to Kravaxi attacks, traps, and exhaustion. When they finally reached the Queen's chamber, only Yoon Kyung remained alive. She was wounded, exhausted, and knew she wouldn't make it out. The Queen was massive, easily 50 meters tall, her body constantly birthing new Kravaxi soldiers. She was beautiful in a terrible way, organic and alien and completely inhuman. Yoon Kyung set the fusion charge and sat down. She had a choice. She could try to run, possibly make it to a safe distance. Or she could stay and make sure the charge went off. She stayed. The explosion that followed was visible from orbit. The planet's crust cracked open, magma erupting across half the surface. The Queen died instantly, along with every Kravaxi in a 1,000-kilometer radius. Yoon Kyung's final transmission was brief. Mission complete. Mission complete. Tell my family I love them. Then static. The death of the queen sent shockwaves through the entire swarm. Without her coordinating presence, the hive mind began to fragment. Cravaxi ships across the galaxy suddenly lost cohesion. Some attacked each other. Some fled in random directions. Some simply shut down. Ball Ra watched the tactical display as swarm forces began to scatter. Now, hit them while they're confused. All task forces, pursue and destroy. I want every Cravaxi ship hunted down. What followed was not a battle but an execution. Human ships chased fleeing swarm vessels across light years. There was no mercy, no chance for surrender. Weapons officer Seok Jin tracked a group of 20 swarm ships trying to escape into deep space. He launched long-range missiles and watched as each target blinked off his screen. 20 confirmed kills, he reported mechanically. Good, Boora replied. Keep hunting. For 2 weeks, the extermination continued. Small groups of human ships ranged across previously uncharted space, following Cravaxi signals and destroying them. Pilot Kyung-soo personally destroyed the last known swarm breeding ship, a damaged vessel trying to reach a distant nebula. He fired a single antimatter torpedo and watched it disintegrate. When the tactical computers finally confirmed no Cravaxi signals remained, an eerie silence fell over the human fleet. Weapons officer Seok Jin sat at his station, looking at the final tally. Estimated Cravaxi killed, 400 billion. Worlds sterilized, 27. Star systems destroyed, 12. He felt nothing. He knew he should feel something, horror or guilt or satisfaction. But there was just emptiness. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Thelvan stood beside Bora. They watched a visual feed of a Cravaxi world burning, the last of the nanite swarms completing their work. In 6 hours, nothing organic would remain on that planet. It's done, Thelvan whispered. The swarm is extinct. Yes, Bora said. What have we done? What have you made us do? Beora turned to face him. Her eyes were hard, but not cruel. You asked for aid. We gave you annihilation. You wanted to survive. This is what survival costs. But they're gone. An entire species wiped from existence. Yes, they are. And your people are safe. That's what you hired us to do. Thelvan looked at her, and for the first time, he truly saw what humans were. They weren't evil. They weren't cruel for cruelty's sake. They were just willing to do what was necessary, no matter the cost. That made them more dangerous than any weapon they'd created. I fear you, Thelvan said honestly. More than I ever feared the swarm. Good, Bora replied. You should. News of the Cravaxi extinction spread across the galaxy within days. The Galactic Council, a coalition of 70 civilized species, called an emergency session. Representatives from every major empire gathered in the council chambers, a massive space station orbiting a neutral star. The topic was humanity and what to do about them. The Valfine representative stood before the council. He was not Thelvan, who had refused the position, but a senior diplomat named Vex Ara. She looked tired and spoke carefully. The Cravaxi swarm threatened to destroy our entire civilization. We called for help from every member of this council. None of you answered. You were afraid. You didn't want to risk your own forces. So we turned to humanity, a species outside our alliance. They came. They fought. They won. A representative from the Kix Empire, an insectoid species, clicked its mandibles in agitation. They committed genocide. They exterminated an entire species. By the laws of this council, that is the highest crime. Vexara nodded slowly. Yes, they did. And we asked them to do it. We gave them permission. If they are guilty, then so are we. The council erupted in arguments. Some species wanted to sanction Earth, to blockade their space and cut them off from galactic trade. Others argued that humanity had saved the Valthene and stopped a threat that could have spread to other systems. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Earth's representative was allowed to speak. Diplomat Hai-Jin entered the council chamber wearing simple formal attire. She looked at the assembled aliens calmly. She had prepared a speech, but standing there, she decided to speak from the heart instead. "You're right to be afraid of us," she began. "We scare ourselves sometimes. Humans have a capacity for violence that is extreme even by galactic standards. We know this. We've spent thousands of years trying to control it, channel it, suppress it." She walked to the center of the chamber. "But here's what you need to understand. We don't enjoy violence. We don't seek it out. What we did to the swarm was necessary, not pleasurable. We took no joy in it." A representative from the Trell Collective, a telepathic species, spoke up. "Yet you did it with such efficiency. Such cold calculation." "Yes," Hai-Jin agreed. "Because if we let emotion drive us, we'd be even more dangerous. Would you prefer we killed them out of hatred? Would that be better?" Silence. Hai-Jin continued. "Humanity learned a hard lesson in our own history. Sometimes evil exists that cannot be reasoned with, cannot be reformed, cannot be allowed to continue. The Kravaxi swarm was that kind of evil. They didn't want peace. They didn't want coexistence. They wanted to consume everything. So we stopped them the only way possible. By becoming monsters yourselves," someone called out. Hai-Jin met their eyes. "Maybe, but we're monsters who keep our word." The Valthene asked for help. We helped them. We didn't abandon them like the rest of you did. The council had no response to that. After hours more debate, the council voted. Earth would face formal condemnation for its methods, but no actual sanctions. The vote was close, but pragmatism won out. Every species present knew that having humanity as an ally was better than having them as an enemy. Meanwhile, the human fleet prepared to return to Earth. In the weeks since the swarm's extinction, a strange mood had settled over the ships. There were no celebrations, no victory parties. Soldiers went about their duties quietly. Some requested transfers to non-combat roles. Others asked to speak with chaplains or therapists. Medic Ji Woo organized a memorial service in the main hangar of the Indomitable. She invited everyone, human and Valthene alike. Hundreds gathered as she stood at a podium. "We're here to remember the dead," she said simply. "All of them. The humans who died fighting. The Valthene who were killed before we arrived. And yes, the Kravaxi we exterminated." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the crowd. Ji Woo continued. "I know some of you think it's strange to mourn our enemies, but they were living beings. They had their own nature, their own way of existing. They couldn't help being what they were, just like we can't help being what we are. We killed them because we had to, not because they deserved to die." She paused, wiping tears from her eyes. "We need to remember them. All of them. Because the moment we forget, the moment killing becomes easy and meaningless, that's when we truly become monsters." The service lasted an hour. People shared stories, prayers, and moments of silence. When it ended, something had shifted. The weight was still there, but it felt a little more bearable. High Commander Thelvin found Captain Ji-sung in an observation lounge before the human fleet departed. The old soldier was sitting alone, looking at the stars. "May I join you?" Thelvin asked. Ji-sung nodded to the seat beside him. They sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Thelvin spoke. "Your species terrifies us. You know that, don't you?" "Yes," Ji-sung replied. "We know. We're grateful. We would be extinct without you. But we're also afraid. We're fortifying our borders. Not against the swarm, against you. Against what you might do if we ever displease you. Jae-sung sighed. I understand. I'd do the same in your position. Is there nothing I can say to ease that fear? The old captain thought for a moment. We terrify ourselves. That's why we try so hard to be peaceful. That's why we have so many rules and laws and ethics. Because when we stop trying, when we let ourselves go, he gestured to the space outside where swarm worlds had once existed. This is what happens. How do we know you'll keep trying? How do we know you won't decide one day that we're a threat that needs to be eliminated? Jae-sung met his eyes. You don't know. You have to trust us. And that's terrifying, I understand. But here's the thing. We don't want to be the monsters. We do it when we have to, but we don't want to. That's the difference between us and the swarm. They had no choice. We do. And we choose to be better. I hope you're right, Thelvin said quietly. So do I, Jae-sung admitted when the human fleet finally jumped back to Earth space. They were greeted by a planet-wide celebration. Parades filled the streets. Politicians gave speeches about humanity's strength and valor. But the soldiers returning from the war didn't join the festivities. They went home quietly, trying to readjust to normal life. Engineer Taeyang returned to his wife and daughter. He couldn't tell them about the weapons he'd built, the destruction he'd enabled. He just held them and tried to remember what peace felt like. Pilot Kyung-soo took a leave of absence from military service. He spent his days walking in parks, being around living things, trying to cleanse the memory of all the death he'd caused. Intelligence. Officer Young-ho deleted all his notes on Kravaxi communication systems. He never wanted to think about that work again. Earth's government released an official statement to the galaxy. It was brief and direct. Humanity will always answer calls for aid from those who need help. But you must understand, we don't do half measures. When we commit to something, we commit fully. We saved the Valthene because they asked us to. We destroyed the Kravaxi because it was necessary. We would do it again if we had to. The message was clear. Humanity was willing to be the galaxy's protector. But on their own terms. Fleet Admiral Bajora retired from active service. 6 months after returning to Earth, she gave one final interview before leaving public life. Do I regret what we did? She repeated the reporter's question. No, the swarm needed to be stopped. We stopped them. Do I feel good about it? Also no. I'll carry the weight of those deaths for the rest of my life. But would I make the same choice again? Yes, every time. On the Valthene homeworld, a monument was erected. It honored the billions who died in the swarm attacks and the humans who saved them. The inscription was simple. They asked for aid. We answered with destruction. May we never forget the price of survival. Thelvin stood before the monument on its unveiling day. Beside him, Kremva the philosopher placed a hand on his shoulder. History will judge us for what we did, she said. Let it, Thelvin replied. We're alive to be judged. That's what matters. In a small chapel on Earth, Medic Ji-woo lit a candle. She did this every week now, a private ritual. The candle was for the Kravaxi, for all the lives ended in the name of survival. She prayed that someday the galaxy would find a better way. But until then, she knew humanity would stand ready, ready to help, ready to fight, ready to do whatever was necessary. Because when humanity promised aid, they delivered absolute destruction. And the galaxy would never, ever forget.